This book contains real spells that could lead to your death. I urge you not to read it. It's best not to read the book at all and not to refer to any addresses or phone numbers inside it. The one speaking to you now is not the book, but the conscience of the book. Oh God, may God not allow. The story I'm about to tell you is an archive story from Horror Stories Over Coffee. It was written for us by Samar Hisham, and it's one of the very distinctive stories that was very beloved at the time of its presentation. I believe it will be well received by those who haven't heard it before, and for those hearing it for the first time or those who have heard it before, it will evoke the most beautiful memories of the beginnings of our horror listening and our follow-up to the program Over Coffee. The story is titled Say Yes or No, Is It Believable? By the author, I don't know where from, because I'm confident that my story is unlike any story anyone may have heard, read, or even experienced. I'm not going to say it's terrifying, because for me, it's beyond terror itself. Let me tell you that you must listen and decide its classification as you wish. Hopefully, you'll classify it as science fiction or children's stories. My name is Ahmed Yasser, 28 years old, single. I haven't gotten married yet because I feel like I'd be a failed husband. I don't want to feel tied down or suffocated, so I end up wasting my money on other things. Honestly, I'm looking for anything strange, horror, science fiction, puzzle books, you name it. My friends jokingly call me the archive of nonsense. At the beginning of each month, when everyone else is getting their big paychecks, I'm also there, but with a heavy heart. I spend a lot of money on books, making research easy due to the repetition of ideas. There's a routine I follow, and I know exactly where to find what I'm looking for. Booksellers know me and hand me the strange stuff I seek. Sometimes I buy a book and find it filled with spells and warnings. Supposedly, I should be afraid to reread it, but I don't fear. It's just my luck. My passion is increasing even more, and the blessing is in you, Teacher Eunice. You made us, in relation to us, experience this horror. It's like science fiction stories and Tom and Jerry. At the beginning of last July, I received my salary and went to buy a book as usual. I didn't find anything new. There's nothing new. I started reading stories about demons coming out at night, old horror stories and consumed stories. This one steals from that, and that one carves that. Almost without exaggeration, I memorized how each one writes, how they do it. But at the same time, I wanted to indulge in my hobby, buying books. The name attracted me. I liked a few titles, so I bought them, even though I know there's nothing new. I know the idea that you become a regular at the book fair, buying a few books, knowing they'll be left untouched because you've memorized the style. But it's a passion, and as I expected, there's really nothing new or exciting. All the good books. In fact, I have them, I've read them, and their quality is above 100 times. It's not like before. Renewing worn-out ideas, literally. I read a bit from the books, but most of them I found to be very ordinary. So, I'd get bored and throw them back on the shelf next to their siblings. With the new month, I had the same enthusiasm to go down and search anew. My excitement was towards a specific book I heard about and read about online, mentioning that there were new books released in horror and mystery. As the days passed and the month went by, I went to buy the books from a new bookstore that had just opened a few months ago, by the way. When I saw it, I was sure they would have new things. The prices, honestly, were higher than I expected, so I thought, okay, just one book then. I entered the bookstore and started looking around amidst the books until I stopped at a book called The Paper, a name that's not frightening but intrigued me, maybe because the cover had traces of something like bloodstains, handprints, or some such. Amidst the books, and it was black, with a smoke-like mark resembling cigarettes, and, in the middle, a picture of the author. At the bottom of the back cover, there was a small sentence that almost went unnoticed. "This book is based on a true story." I said, "Okay, this is it. There's nothing else." I paid the money, and the man seemed eagerly waiting, as if he couldn't believe I wanted this specific book. He didn't say anything unusual, but his expression seemed to imply, "Do you really believe this book has a strange story?" "I don't know. I don't understand this book since the day it was released. No one approached it. I returned all the copies as returns and left this one, but it will still be there if I decide to have it. I don't understand. People buy it and return it. So what exactly? People don't approach it at all. You're the first one to even touch it, by hand. Is it really so terrifying or what? All right, I'll buy it, man, and I'll break this curse for you, completely." I took the book and left. It's normal for me to put any new book in the library and read a bit from it every day, but this book had something very strange that really intrigued me. I was so excited to start reading it right away, and this is what happened. I said, just an hour a day, but who am I kidding? The book was like a drug addiction. Although I'm not someone who finishes a book in one sitting, this is what happened to me. On the first page of the book, it was written, "This book contains a real spell that may lead to your death. I urge you not to read it, and it is preferable not to read the book as a whole and not to pay attention to any titles or phone numbers inside the book. The one speaking to you now is not the book, but rather a conscience warning you. So help me God, I understand this suspense game, and I understand it, and I memorize what it is, a monster. Don't read it, neither do I." The book will fascinate you. It talks about a guy named Salem who is passionate about collecting antiques and old rare items. His apartment, like mine, was single and full of rare items that he meticulously arranged, making his room look like a museum. The book describes the room as so full of antiques that it feels like an archaeological site. As I read from the book, you feel like you've traveled back in time. The story's hero kept saying that he collects things and puts them in the room, and sometimes he would advertise in the newspapers that he was willing to pay any amount to buy rare antique items. As long as it's authentic and not fake or counterfeit, he didn't care much about the money. His family had died years ago, and he inherited considerable sums. After placing an advertisement about his need for antiques, his phone rang 2 days later, and he found out that someone had a very nice, authentic antique in excellent condition. He told him they wouldn't disagree on the price, and he agreed with Salem. Salem, the hero, went to the man's house. He said the antique was for $50. Indeed, Salem went to George's house, the man offering his antique, and it was a typewriter from the olden days. Almost no one of us, let's say, had seen its like. Salem said that the typewriter really looked old, but its condition was excellent. Salem asked George why he was selling it, and he said he wanted to get rid of it, meaning he didn't want it anymore. Salem was a little taken aback by the word "get rid of it," but he shrugged it off. The deal was made, and a new antique was added to Salem's archaeological room. One day, Salem returned home from work a bit later than usual because he had stayed up late with some friends. When he got home, he collapsed onto the bed from exhaustion and fell asleep. He woke up to the strangest thing he could wake up to, the sound of the typewriter. Salem got up from sleep, startled, and sat on the bed. When he noticed the sound, he got up, opened the door of the room, and went to his antique room. The sound was coming from it. When he entered, he stood in place, shocked. The typewriter's keys were working by themselves. as if someone invisible was using them. Salem approached it, looked at it, searched for any mechanism, for example, that might be hanging or something that triggered its operation. But he found nothing. Salem picked up the typewriter and placed it in his bedroom on the desk in front of the bed, because to him, it seemed like a case that needed to be studied, whether it was a mistake or something else, without awareness and without thinking. He brought an old piece of cloth and started cleaning the typewriter. He brought paper and ink and tried it, and it worked. He tried writing on it, amazed by the whole thing, and decided to... On the computer keyboard or laptop, there's no more room for errors. This is Microsoft Office, Word, and the usual stuff. But here, he went back in time a lot to use the typewriter. He was delighted with the experience and excited. In about 2 weeks, he had completed a large part of his childhood memories and also his youth. He decided that all the memoirs he would write would be about the positive aspects of his life. He wouldn't talk about anything sad or painful, hoping that one day when he gets married and has children, they would read them and they would be a source of memories, nostalgia, and happiness for them. One day, Salem finished a part of his memoirs book and, tired, he decided to rest for a while. He fell asleep to the sound of the typewriter, which was working by itself again. This had happened once before, but it hadn't been repeated since then. Salem approached it cautiously this time. The typewriter wasn't just typing randomly. This time, it was actually writing something, as if the paper was waiting for it to write. There were bloodstains or ink stains on the paper. By the way, Salem stood still with the typewriter. The typewriter was typing 5 letters in English, 1 on each line, and then moving to the next line to type them again. These letters were HTTEIHTTE. What did it mean, HTTEIHTTE? He couldn't understand what it meant at the moment. The typewriter stopped typing, and Salem brought a paper and said, "I'll start scrambling the letters. HTTEIHTTE." He wrote the letters spaced apart, then he flipped them right and left, and he stopped when he scrambled the letters to spell HTTEIET. He was startled when he saw the word death or die. How could the typewriter write this word on its own? He thought for a moment. Then he pulled the paper from the typewriter. At that moment, Salem was very happy with the new experience. He was used to typing what the typewriter had written, but he noticed that the paper he used for his memoirs was different from the paper with the word on it. His memoirs paper was all clean except for the paper with the word, which was numbered and had handwriting around it. What is this? Is it a spell or what? Did I unconsciously rearrange the letters? Surely the strange typewriter was behind it all. He began to think about what to do and decided to call George right away from the number he had. In case you forgot, George was the one he bought the typewriter from. Salem was surprised when George said, "Who are you? I'm George. What did you buy from me? I don't know anyone named Salem. Where did you get this number anyway? What did you buy from me?" And he hung up. Salem was determined to deny it and shut the door in Salem's face. Salem returned to the room with the typewriter, but everything seemed normal. The memoirs were there, the typewriter was clean, and nothing was wrong. The paper with the writing on it didn't mention any of the confusion Salem felt. He sat on the bed for a while, puzzled, and eventually surrendered to sleep. He slept lightly, as usual, with the sound of the typewriter, which had become a source of fear, panic, and anxiety for him. He went to the desk and found the same situation again. Bloodstains were writing on the paper he had written on. Yes, a lot of bloodstains. He made sure it wasn't a dream and saw that it was writing on his memoirs paper too. This time, it wasn't writing the word death or jumbled letters. This time, it was writing things related to him. It talked about how he saw his sister being in a car accident, and dying. Due to it, by the way, this issue has psychologically haunted him for many years, as nobody could overcome the issue smoothly. Wadi al-Kala, the writer, contemplates and writes about it to add it to Salem's memoirs, which were supposed to be positive. However, Salem burst into tears while reading what the writer was jotting down, as if she were an enemy among enemies, reminding him of all the hardships in his life. He screamed and shouted at the writer's notebook as if it were a person, continued to berate and scream at it as if he were going mad, telling her to stop what she's doing. In the midst of all this, the light went out. The first thing Salem did involuntarily was to step back away from the writer's notebook and into the darkness, as if frightened and anxious. He began to retreat into the darkness, heading towards the kitchen, trying to find a candle or anything to light up. He remembered seeing something in the desk drawer where the writer's notebook, which she had kept working on even in the darkness, was placed. He remembered seeing something, probably a candle, but couldn't recall exactly. However, his curiosity drove him closer to the writer's notebook, and he looked at the paper being written on. By the light of the candle, he found the writer writing about the day of his mother's death, mentioning that she died angry with him because he was not a dutiful son and that his mother's revenge would begin immediately. She put two dots together and stopped writing. The writer refrained from writing, and I'm sorry to say that the writer refrained from writing as if she were a human being. Because I myself don't know what happened. The world plunged into total darkness. Salem waited to find out how his deceased mother's revenge would unfold. Minutes of silence passed for Salem as if they were years. The writer resumed writing anew. This time, Salem lit the candle. The writer wrote in uneven letters and overlapping drawings that didn't make any sense to him at all, symbols he had never seen before. Salem realized that he had driven the writer mad. The writer started to write hastily and hysterically, as if she had gone insane. Salem was terrified of her, and she wrote that the vengeance of the dead is unbearable by humans. The vengeance of the dead comes to you while you are still alive, alone in the darkness of the night. And then, a scream ripped through the night. The writer was still writing, "Beware of the revenge of the dead." The scream came again from the adjacent room. Salem rushed into the room, holding a flashlight since the candle was almost finished, and looked around the room to the right and left. Everything seemed perfectly normal. He couldn't pinpoint the source of the scream. The time was around midnight, and the writer suddenly stopped writing. She remained completely silent. Nothing had fundamentally changed. Salem returned and cautiously approached the paper to find the last lines written by the writer while he was in the second room. It read, "When he heard the screams of the dead, he hurried holding a flashlight to illuminate his path, but he found nothing, or he thought so, or he deluded himself into thinking so. He imagined the voices but didn't know they were real. He didn't know that the sound was the sound of the door of the dead being opened wide for them to pass through. Now he reads these lines while they stand behind him. He doesn't dare to look behind him out of fear and terror. Salem, they are behind you." Now, the word is that Salem froze in place, not expressing anything about his condition or what he was experiencing. Surely you also want to look behind you right now. Look behind you and tell me what you saw or felt. Salem felt heat on his back and on his arms, or both arms, as if there was something burning behind him. He couldn't dare to shine the flashlight behind him because he knew if he did, he would see hell itself. He closed his eyes and kept praying. Slowly, he turned around, still afraid to open his eyes. He felt warm breaths on his face, the sound of his heartbeats pounding like drums, something inside him warning him not to open his eyes, telling him it's better to keep them closed. He began to feel something swirling around him, confirming to him that he wasn't alone. The temperature around him increased drastically, and he felt as if there were more than one person around him. The place became so hot while he was still standing with his eyes closed, feeling somewhat relieved. Moments passed as if they were years, but the message inside was clear that it was true, and what was required was not to open his eyes. Otherwise, he would regret it. After the passing of all these moments, everything disappeared, and he felt a kind of coldness inside the room he was in, coinciding with the return of the writer's voice. He opened his eyes again and shone the flashlight on the writer's machine, which had come back to life. The writer wrote, "Poor Salem thought he had escaped from the dead, but the poor man doesn't know they will not leave him, for the dead will inevitably seek revenge. This is what you deserve, Salem." The writer stopped writing, and Salem became like a madman. They are not talking about the past now. They are talking about what is happening moment by moment. Salem said to himself, "Who are they, and what are they doing now?" The light returned after Salem, almost dead from fear, pulled all the paper from the writer's machine and burned it without hesitation. The writer stopped writing again. He tried to burn the paper, not knowing that the revenge of the dead is much stronger than him. He decided to surrender, and he knew what surrender meant. Salem, with all his determination, removed the writer and scattered it on the ground. As he did, he felt a strange sensation in his chest, and the sound suddenly stopped. The room began to heat up again, but this time he was not closing it. He felt as if his body was about to burn. He looked at his arm and saw marks on it, as if someone was holding it tightly. The crazy, insane writer returned. Writing in moments, Salem left the place entirely and fled. He continued to run through the streets like a madman, not knowing where to go or what to do. Suddenly, he remembered he had to return to George again, and that he would not leave except as a killer or a killed man, because George knew the story of that cursed writer. Salem took the signal and started running. My father disappeared, and my mother died in a car accident, just as fate had it. I tried every possible way to get rid of it. I tried burning it, breaking it, throwing it away. Every time I threw it away, I'd find it back in the house, present. I thought of gifting it, giving it to more than one person, but it would vanish from them and return to me again. I don't know what its problem was. Every night I'd hear it calling out to me. Don't be surprised, yes, calling out, tapping, and the sound of keys. I never approached it. I was determined not to get close to it, but I kept trying to understand. The last sentence written, "Give it to whoever asks for it." I decided the only solution was that someone else had to ask for it, not me giving it to them. So, I had to put it up for sale. The curse would then move on to someone else. It was him who asked for it. I made the announcement so there would be a demand for it. And you, Mr. Salem, you're the one who requested it, just as she said. Salem could hear this dialogue. He was terrified, especially when George cried during the night, pleading for forgiveness and asking him to sell it as well. Salem shouted, "I can't sell it! You were watching the effects of the curse on your brother. I'm just like your brother. I'm in the midst of the curse. If your brother could get rid of it, then I could too." I started experiencing events in my life. I began to fear getting close to it, yet at the same time, I couldn't stay away from it. Your own brother couldn't get rid of it. Salem left George and went out saying, "I didn't know what to do." Yes, I understood the essence of the story, but what to do next? I thought a lot until I decided to try selling it. I actually offered it for sale, just as George said, but no one responded to the point where I offered it for sale or for free to whoever wanted it as a gift. No one even came close. Every night, I'd find it satisfied, sitting there, and I'd sit down and write. I started writing a book about mystery and puzzles, intending to finish the book and gift it along with her. I was trying to resist it, trying to challenge it, and I was driven by my desire to write. I got a large sheet and wrapped the typewriter in it, and at that moment, the room darkened again, and the typewriter went crazy again, as if angry at what I was doing. I felt pain in my hands, and my fingers started moving on their own, as if writing. I tried to sleep, to wake up from the dream, only to find my hands in the air, writing and bleeding. I felt the presence of people around me and felt the warmth of their breaths. Invisible people. I remembered the words of the typewriter that they would be around me and take revenge quickly without thinking. I ran, removed the sheet from it, and continued writing. I'm writing to tell you what happened. I'm also writing to tell you that I did this and removed the sheet. I have finished the first part of my book. Perhaps there will be a second part, God knows. I'm leaving the address for you if you want to come see it, buy it, or try it. Or come, Salem is threatening me and my children. In a situation like this, what should I do? Forget about adventure, horror, and demons. Eunice, the horror guy, and the history of horror. Now, people prefer to talk about him. He's the most famous horror writer who taught people that sweet talk we sell. But now, the issue involves my children. Currently, you're all thinking with me, what should I do? I wish I were done. Enough. Be quiet for a bit. I'm tired. You're causing me trouble, working day and night. I can't sleep because of you. I want to wake up in the morning to go to the radio for my morning radio show. I don't even know if I wake up to the sound of your knocking and banging every day. You almost never stop, except for the call to prayer. Please, be quiet. Be quiet. Have mercy on me. Have mercy on me. I've forbidden them from entering my office, thinking I'm always there, isolating myself from them because I want to write. But they don't know that I'm afraid for them because of you, Salem. For God's sake, Salem, for God's sake, for God's sake. Salem is threatening me, threatening my children. What should I do? Forget about adventure, horror, and demons. Eunice, the horror guy, and the history of horror. Now, people prefer to talk about him. He's the most famous horror writer who taught people the sweet talk we sell. But now, the issue involves my children. Currently, you're all thinking with me, what should I do? The truth is, I've done it. I'm hearing it. She started writing, yes, in the office. I'm just telling you, and she's working, writing. She helped me, I'm not lying to you. She helped me and started writing a new story, a beautiful story. When I read it, it intrigued me greatly. But I can't do what he's asking me to do. I can't. Even after the curse came to my house, and to me personally, I can't transfer it to you. I don't know what to do. You'll tell me. What should I do? I wish I were done. Enough. Be quiet for a bit. I'm tired. You're causing me trouble working day and night. I can't sleep because of you. I want to wake up in the morning to go to the radio for my morning radio show. I don't even know if I wake up to the sound of your knocking and banging every day. You almost never stop, except for the call to prayer. Please, be quiet. Be quiet. Have mercy on me. Have mercy on me. I've forbidden them from entering my office, thinking I'm always there, isolating myself from them because I want to write. But they don't know that I'm afraid for them because of you, Salem.